It's a beautiful sunrise. I did a cold water plunge this morning with some neighbors. I've been doing this plunge. I have this plunge group going that yeah, almost every morning we go.
So no
Uh,
wetsuit, you just go.
no
Yeah,
wetsuit.
awesome. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just 10 minutes and it like sets up your whole day.
That's I need to get more I've been doing cold showers, but I really need to get back into that would help so much right now. I need to do it in the morning too. It's like so
No
important.
need. You're not. So my husband's psychiatrist, no, what therapist, says, yeah, need,
And
it should,
should.
I want
Should.
and I will. No need and
Yes.
should. It should be want and will.
That's great. I'm glad you called that out. That's totally what my mom would have done right now.
Because, need is like scolding you. It's
You're
like,
right. Yes, yes, yes. It's a negative. I
yeah.
would like to get back into a rhythm of, I had a whole year where I kind of like wasn't really in the ocean very much last year. Just a weird, I don't know. Have you had that where there've been shifts for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, since I started this cold plunging, I've hardly surfed at all because it's
Interesting.
just kind of like enough. And like the thought
Yeah,
of putting on a wetsuit, I'm just like, I don't know, because also the waves haven't been great, but
totally.
I've been really, really surprised at how much it's shifted my need to, or desire, when I say need, but my desire to surf. It just calms my whole nervous system all day. So
Yeah, totally. Just it's some kind of connection. Yeah, I feel like I've been opting for altitude. Like I want to climb uphill lately. I'm just following, listening to what my body is asking for. I do a lot of barefoot walks on the beach and I'll surf sometimes. The waves, again, it hasn't been anything like remarkable to go make an effort for, but and so this winter wasn't that great up there?
Well, there were it actually was pretty good
Mhm.
here. I missed a lot of good days, but and Mavericks had that humongous day.
Yeah. You were out
Right
for that?
on New Year's. Yeah, I was out for that. Um,
What happened that day? I'm curious.
I mean, oh, not that many people got up. No boats. Oh no, there
Hmm.
were two, one whaler got out and one Zodiac got out, but other boats just sunk. I mean, just got flooded and didn't make it out. Most of the boats didn't make it out. Most of the skis didn't make it out.
Mm.
So that alone made it special because I was a Bianca and Zoe and me and this woman, Nico Sell, I was on her, excuse me, I was on her ski and Zoe and Bianca were, oh, and then Audrey, another photographer, they picked up. So there were five women out there. That's it. And
Hmm.
then just all the best in the world, Kai,
Mhm.
Lenny, and Bridge, and Lucas Chumbo and Lucas Fink. And anyhow, it was
Oh,
exciting. It was the biggest anyone had ever seen.
yeah.
I felt like it was yeah, it was different. I the January 6th, 2020 was, or 2021 was, I thought it was just cleaner, so it felt bigger, but or about this equivalent, but it
Mhm.
was just chaos. It was wild. Two skis got like Lucas Chumbo and Lucas Fink's ski got taken from under them because one of their, I think a jacket got caught in the
Oh no.
throttle and it just took off. And actually they managed to save that ski. Another person, there were two skis that were lost. It was just like super exciting.
Yeah, it sounds like a crazy day. How's Zoe doing? Did she catch anything that day? Was she just out there to get a lay of the land or?
Yeah, it was too, she didn't catch anything. She was just kind of observing. It was a tow only day
Okay.
and she's still pretty new to towing.
All right.
But Bianca caught the biggest wave of her life
Amazing.
and I got it. So that was exciting.
Yay. Okay,
Yeah.
very cool. And you were in the water or you were on a boat?
No, on a day like that, it was
Yeah.
just, there's no way. It was
Yeah.
just so many skis everywhere that I would have just been a hazard.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. And there
Good.
was no clear shoulder. It was
Yeah.
moving all over the
It's just
place. It was
chaos.
like not a day to swim.
Well, good. I'm glad you weren't in the water. That's
Yeah.
stressful to hear if you are in the water on something like that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I will start with saying that the scenes that you sent, so good, Sachi. I cannot wait for this film. Yeah, I was completely blown away. I watched them all twice, and a couple of them I watched three times. The
Wow.
I just want to say,
Thank you.
filmmaker, like your quality of storytelling is so impressive. How I never felt talked at any point. I was just in the moment. Like the quality of verite is so good. And the arguments that you're setting up are, it just really lets the audience do the work to, oh my God, what the fuck? Like, how is this happening? Like, I completely enjoyed that watching experience. Yeah, I cannot wait for more. I just could gobble your scenes all day. They're so well done. And then
Thank
I
you.
also watched Crutch, which is fabulous. I had no idea you made that. And that one, I know that's like not so much a surf conversation, but it's so good. And he's someone that you went to school with, from what I understand.
I went, yeah, that story started in the first grade because he
Wow.
was 2 years older than me, but he had wore this leg brace, and during recess would always be at the top of the stairs and we'd be playing in the bottom, and I, would see him and just be like, what's that guy's story? And yeah, 20 years later, whatever it was, 25 years later, I started to find out with my camera as a documentarian, and 20 years after that, I finally finished it.
Amazing. Yeah, I think what I noticed right away, they're two super distinct stories. There's not like a lot to compare, but the longevity of your storytelling, that you sit with your characters for a while and you let things unfold, and that archival and that human history is, I appreciate it way more as a viewer. It's definitely more my taste. I don't like things as much that are just like of a sparked moment. It feels like I need the context of time to really understand what's going on. And is that something intentional, or is that just who you are as a filmmaker, taking your time?
I think it's a combination of, well, I mean, thank you. I appreciate that you appreciate the verite. I think I'm able to achieve some of that in large part because because of no budget, I'm usually the only one there. So it's just most of what you shot, what you saw was just me with a camera. Um, so the plus side of that is that, well, it's low cost is the plus side, but the plus side for the viewers that I feel like I can get pretty intimate
Mhm.
moments, and yeah, I think most stuff today, and part of the reason it's been hard to fund this is that most stuff is so highly produced and slick that and performative that my stuff isn't that. I'm like, my background is as a I studied documentary film in a journalism program at UC Berkeley, so it's there's some ethics and rules that I was taught that are really kind of going by the wayside, especially with documentary film. But something that I consider and that I'm glad is apparent in the footage. In terms of the length of time, yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of, I mean, honestly, it's because it's been so, I've made both of these films as an independent filmmaker. And so I've raised all the budget myself. With Crutch, I had a co-producer and co-director, Chandler Evans. So I can't, he was a large part of all of that. So, but, so funding it myself means like doing what I can with sweat equity and my own time, and not paying myself anything, but paying my time, also paying my money to take myself places, and buying the camera and all of that stuff, but raising it little by little. So in the meantime, these stories that I've told are, I mean, documentaries in general, like stuff is happening. Like it's, in an ideal, we're working within this construct of like Hollywood budgets, deadlines, which trust me, like I would love to have a budget and a deadline, a project that had both of those things. I'm
Yep.
down. I think I
Man.
can do it. But with you can write this proposal, but you don't get it funded for on all of these Hollywood films. They also take like 5 to 10 years to get funded, and then they get made, right? But we can't wait for that. The story's done by the time you raise the money. And so these things were happening. So I was like, what was I going to do? Like just let them pass by? No, I have to be there and press record and witness it, and bear witness and document it. And so with both films, what I've inadvertently done is create my own archive library. I think also a lot of one way of making documentary films is to tell a story that happened in the past, and go back and try and collect archival, right, that was created. Oh, what's the movie I'm thinking of, the sailing movie? Maiden.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
so that,
this.
you know,
Yeah,
so that had the great fortune of this woman documenting a lot of it, right? So they had that great archival collection to work with, but then it's built upon these interviews that are modern day interviews. So that's one really, you know, efficient way to make
yeah,
a documentary. But in my case, I just create the archive myself over
yeah.
the course of many years.
Great.
And actually, I hope that it benefits from it. Our producer on Crutch was like, you know, it's really good that you didn't get funding for this right away, because if you had, you wouldn't have the same film, you know? So,
Totally.
yeah.
It reminded me of like Montage of Hecht or those types of gritty VHS tape. Like it just had such a cool vibe and aesthetic to it the whole route. And I don't know, I thought it was freaking excellent. I mean, I think we'll just have to have a separate conversation about Crutch after, to focus on the surf of She Change, but extremely well done. Like very,
Thank you.
very impressed is all
And
I.
I think thank you. I think the thread that does go through them is that they're both about, you know, I think both skateboarding, dancing, surfing, there's all this like connection of aesthetic movement. It's a sport, but it's not a sport, you know, or it's arguably not a sport. You know, it has these elements. And then it's also, I mean, I'm interested in stories about social justice. And so Crutch was appealing to me because, and what Bill was doing, because it was all about disability. I'm someone who has an invisible disability, so and it's about just breaking boxes. And yeah, as my co-director Chandler, he's mixed race Black, and I'm mixed race Asian, and I think both of us were able to, I know I started the project, but I brought him on as a co-director, co-producer, in large part because I knew he understood what living outside, you know, living outside of a box was like, or being in boxes imposed on you, and how difficult it is for people to think outside of, you know, boxes, which is what Bill's art is all about. And so yeah, so it's trying to change the way people think about disability, and I'm trying to change with She Change, trying to change the way people think about you know, equity and women and what they're capable of.
100%. And I think another, like your intrigue in people's lives where they're in many ways like on the periphery of the mainstream, but just as good or sometimes better than like the, you know, top male athlete surfers, but they're just always put to the sideline. Oh, no, you don't belong here quite yet. Like, why? I'm able to hang. I'm in these circles, and it's just always this attention to those that get pushed aside. And I just see that as a theme in your work, which totally makes sense that it would be mirroring something you've experienced as well, or just something that is, you know, hitting a nerve within you. And I can relate as well. It's why I was attracted to Angela right away. I was just tired of seeing the same like white straight male protagonists climb a mountain, or like it just finally this was someone who was so different from anyone I had seen on screen before. And I'm like, yes, I'm so fascinated. How did you get here? Because this could not have been easy. Like
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
so with She Change, where are you right now in the making of?
I just got off the phone right before this call with my editor and producer, and we just mapped out a edit schedule that will get us done by September. Mid-September is when we hope to do picture lock. And
Amazing.
yeah, and then we'll see, then we'll probably be like you and have another 4 months. No, I hope not. But I feel like most films actually do have that trajectory. But that's our goal, is to have a cut to submit to Sundance. So
Great. Oh, that will time great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So then what is left funding wise to get you guys there? Do you have funding to take you to September, or what's after that?
nope, we have funding to take us till the end of until June, around June. And then so I'm also we have $275,000 yet to raise. I'm still hustling on that. That's pretty much 90% of what I do right now, is
Yeah.
trying to raise money. Mhm.
I mean, I can relate. We had honestly at the 11th hour, what was it? It's like September. Yeah, right around when we had submitted Row of Life to Sundance. And we got an angel investor who came in, not for a ton of money, but enough to get us through the edit. And It's funny how it sometimes it's not like I count on it, but it just kind of works out eventually. Like you're so used to hustling. We don't have funds for color and sound right now. That's our next like, trick I have to pull out of a hat. And it's just as an independent filmmaker, you're kind of always anticipating and it shouldn't be this way. I don't want to say it this sentence because it doesn't have to be this way. It should be abundant and like resources should be there, but there's just this like gap you're always prepared for mentally in the back of your mind. Like I want to sink in and be totally creatively immersed, but I also have to have this whole business mindset of how do I make this happen for the next 2 months? How do I do this? How after we get this done, what comes after that? And it's exhausting. It's very exhausting.
Yeah, they're
And I
very
don't know
different mindsets.
totally. And I had wanted to talk about financing later, but we can dive into it now because um I'm curious your journey with it. Like so the film technically started, when did it start? What year?
20 2014.
2014.
What
And then
year are we now? 2014. Yes.
wow, 10,
10
10
years
years.
ago. Mhm.
So, and then who did you start with Bianca or how did it become?
Yeah, she was my entry point. I had just started working with her and pitched a story about her to the Chronicle and did a short profile of her that was news pegged to this Wicker event that Nico Sal, this tech entrepreneur, um, invited 13 women from around the world to Mavericks for this invitational event. It wasn't an official event because they couldn't get the permit. There's only one permit issued per year. But they all gathered and I covered it for the Chronicle and for Surfline and for this movie It Ain't Pretty. And so that was the first time I swam in the water at Mavericks with my camera. And, a lot of that was being inspired and motivated by all these women in the water.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so that's where it started.
Okay. So that's the scene with Jeff Clark and when they're in this.
No, 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 no. That's like 2 years later. So,
Okay.
but that scene, that footage is gonna probably be open the film. My
Okay.
footage in
I think
2014, I
that's an
believe.
amazing. Yes. Okay. Great. Great. How interesting. Okay. So it's after the fact. So that's how you met everyone. 2014. Then how did you initiate the conversation with Bianca about a larger project and how did, just can you walk us step by step? How did you integrate more characters? What came next?
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to know them at the event. I think all of us bonded during that event. Certainly the four women in my film were immediately drawn to each other. Their personalities, jived and they were also the best. So that, I mean, from my standpoint as like a sports journalist, it was like mind blowing really, because up until that point, there had been three women who had surfed Mavericks, Bianca, Savannah Shaughnessy, and Jamila Starr.
Hmm.
So all of a sudden, and the same thing happened when the Maui boys came, is like the Maui contingent comes and you're like, oh my God, like they just like dominated. Like they just were like, oh, whatever, little, it just looks like they're just surfing small waves. They're just confidence in big waves is just so
Mhm.
impressive. And so just seeing KK and Andrea and Paige surf those waves, I was like, okay, something is happening here.
Mhm.
Because I had been covering big wave surfing up until that point. I don't know, for like 6, 8 years, because I did a big story when I was at the LA Times on staff about the first big wave tour for men in 2010. And well, it's also, I didn't actually know the big wave tour was going to happen. That was like, the story was called Chasing the Swell, and it
Mhm.
was a 3-part video series where I was following Mark Healy and Greg Long and some of the other guys as they, well, the goal was to get a swell chase from Hawaii to Mavericks to Todos.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
never happened in the time that I was filming them, but I still kind of recreated it. I
Yeah.
mean, journalistically sound. I didn't ever say I went on that swell, but I talked about that chase, and it ended at Todos with where they had the first big wave. Um, an end of the first big wave tour for men. And yeah,
Mhm.
Greg Long spent his prize money from winning the Eddie that year to finance that.
Wow, amazing. You know, I remember that. And it's funny, it's like bringing back an old memory, but I think we watched that in my surf journalism class at USC, which
Oh,
we met because
uh-huh,
you're our guest speaker, Keith's class. Keith,
uh-huh.
shout out Keith. But yeah, I absolutely remember that, and I didn't know. That's really cool that Greg used his winnings to do that, and you were way ahead of the game. Like big wave surfing wasn't colloquially understood at that point, not even in surfing itself. Like now it's more, 100-foot wave and all these things, people talk about it, but that is
Yeah,
like
well,
a solid
yeah.
10 years before that hits mainstream eyes at all. That's
Yeah,
really
I mean, in 2009, I had done a story with Garrett McNamara that was about him surfing. I mean, he had just surfed a glacier in Alaska
remember that.
and with Kelly, and so it was like, who's this crazy man? And we went to this secret slab in the Pacific Northwest, and that was exciting. And after that shoot, Garrett, when I was so I quit the LA Times and I did this road trip through the Americas down the Pacific coast for 14 months with my husband. And when we were in Nicaragua, I got a call from Garrett, who was like, "Hey, I'm going to this place, I'm going to this place. I'm going to Nazare. I need a filmer. Can you come?" And I was I mean, so this is one of those moments that you're like, why did I go? No, but I know why I didn't go. It's because I was trying to make a baby on this road trip. And, my husband was like, yeah, we could go, but are you really gonna like, if
Mm-hmm.
we go, your focus is going to be on big waves and filming, and it's not going to be on making this baby, and it's not going to be finishing this path that we have mapped out for ourselves and given ourselves the time to do. And so I didn't go. And,
And it was worth it.
3 Emmy Award winning seasons later of 100-foot wave, I
Yeah,
sometimes
sure.
question that decision, but if I had done that, I never would have met these women. So everything
Totally.
happens for a
It
reason, right?
happens for a reason. You have the most gorgeous daughter ever, who's Nami, right? Uh,
Yep.
yep, I mean, I'm sure you would take her any day.
She's my 100-foot wave. Yeah.
Exactly,
She's my
exactly.
1,000-foot wave, 10,000-foot wave. Wave, it does, her name means wave in Japanese.
I
So
know, yeah, it's so
yes, she's.
beautiful. So then you met okay, so we're after the road trip, and then you went back to the Bay. Is that what you
So
guys?
when I was in Panama, I got word of this job teaching of this
Okay.
teaching job in San Francisco. So I applied. I got called back when we were in Peru, and then did my interviews and presentations, and then found out in Chile that
Mm-hmm.
found out in Patagonia actually that we were that I was pregnant and that I had gotten this job. So I
Amazing.
came back and yeah, started the job 4 months pregnant, and now Nami's 11,
Wow,
and yeah, here
amazing.
we are.
That's so special, Sachi. Thanks for sharing all of that. So the four women, so it's Kiala, Paige, Andrea, and Bianca. Bianca's the only California woman. Everyone else is
That's
Hawaii
right.
based full time.
Hmm.
Because one of my questions is why these four? They synced. They're obviously a unit. And can you talk about that? Like that natural chemistry and how you as well had to integrate. You have a natural chemistry with them. Can we talk about that whole relationship a bit?
Yeah, I mean, that was actually the joy of this whole documentary journey. And I think the joy of any documentary journey is when surprise things happen. Good and bad, I guess, or it's not a joy, but I don't know. You have to be prepared for these and open and have kind of you have to have both an idea of what the story is, but you definitely have to have the willing be kind of a blank page and also open to whatever might happen. And so my original justification in focusing on these four women was that they had become
Mhm.
fast friends and they were the best.
Mhm.
So, I certainly had ideas of having a whole series about all of these women. Certainly all of the women have incredible stories and deserve time and screen time and a camera on them, no doubt. And if I had the resources, I would have done that,
Mhm.
but I had to focus, right? And so, so these four were already hanging out together. These four were already winning all the awards and just going to be making big changes in the sport from what I could tell. So I just followed them, and then, you know, and then they decided they wanted to get into the Mavericks contest. And so they organized politically and, you know, formed this committee for equity in women's surfing that lobbied for a heat in the Mavericks contest, and then later lobbied for equal pay. And then they used the California Coastal Commission and California state law, which protects equal access to the coasts, in order to support their efforts, and won. So, you know, and then won, not only won that, but, you know, even something I never could have imagined, nor could they have imagined, that they were able to create equal pay in, you know, the World Surf League. Of course, the World Surf League made that decision. They should be credited for that as well. But, you know, it was kind of from the pressure of these women saying that if you don't pay us equally, we're not going to compete in this contest. And at that time, if they didn't compete in the contest, there really would be no contest. You know, they were the best, and there were so few of them that their talent had a lot of power.
So I have two follow-up questions with scenes that you shared with me, and to whatever extent you're comfortable talking about these scenes, because I don't know how secret it all
Yeah.
is until the film comes
Mhm.
out. But the you know, the one of Bianca is, it's a city council meeting. Is that where she is?
The CCC meeting, it's the California Coastal Commission.
Okay, it's the Coastal Commission. And they're waiting for the announcement of the list of women that are going to be invited to participate in the contest. And Bianca, who is the local one woman who's out there all the time, like, this is her domain, she's not invited. She's not among the six. And she interprets this as a slap in the face, middle finger, because she was ruffling some feathers and from what I understood, it was they wanted a 5-year permit that maintained that women would be allowed in every single one. And Jeff Clark and the committee only wanted to insist on 1 year. Did I understand that correctly? Or maybe it's
No, well, Jeff Clark and his and the Mavericks Ventures, I think, is the holding company that had it. But at that point, or no, I think the cartel had it. So the I mean, they were named the cartel.
aptly
So the
named.
cartel, yeah. So the cartel was trying to get a 5-year permit, which is understandable. It is a lot, you know, it is a lot easier to get funding and, you know, plan for 5 years instead of one. But the year before they asked for this 5-year permit, the Coastal Commission had said you can get this 1-year permit under the stipulation that you make efforts to include women in the next year. And so that next year came up. They were like, we want this 5-year permit. And the Coastal Commission was like, well, you haven't really done anything except a week before this meeting started. It wasn't necessarily right before this meeting started, you decided to have this women's heat. Like, you haven't done anything other than that. And so that's why they said, the Coastal Commission voted to give them, okay, we'll give you another 1 year, but with the stipulation that you actually do something, because you haven't really done anything yet, even though we told you to. So yeah.
So Bianca is not invited. Thank you for clarifying all of that. Yes, that makes sense. She's not invited, and I mean, I, as a viewer, was completely infuriated, and I felt like I was processing the shock with her. Like we've all been in that situation where we're excluded from something that we've been at the front lines fighting for, and it's this very unique alchemy of anger, and then also a release of like, well, I mean, I got what I asked for, but it's such a slap, like a personal slap in the face, and just this like mixed emotion universe. And you do such a good job following her after the fact. But I want to know, what was the reaction of other men, like the other males, especially the male surfers? Did they defend her? Did they support? Did they say, what the hell, why is Bianca not in this contest? Was there anybody who came to her defense or brought that up as like an obvious oversight? Not even an oversight. I mean, it was a slap in the face.
Yeah. You know, not vocally, not like, no, there weren't. I mean, the short answer is no. But there was an online petition, and there were, I don't remember how many signatures, but there was quite a lot of support, you know, from the larger community, and I'm certain there were men among those signatories. So so I think there were men on her team, but that is one of the questions I get. And it is also one of the scenes that men react to strongly, because I just remember this one screening that this father of a young girl was just like, he was crying during that scene, because you say you related to that. And I think I like that you relate it to more like an underdog. Any underdog kind of understands that story, which I think is true. But I do also think that women probably have had that experience maybe more than most, right? Of being looked over, or
Yeah,
having the qualifications, but not getting the job, not getting the raise, not getting, whatever it might be. So, but yeah, I mean, it was also a different time, I think, in defense of men. I think it was also somewhat a different time. This was pre-Me Too. This was, and it's just such, as you know, the surf culture is such a bro culture, that to step outside of that and say, hey, bros, like, what are you doing? is just so out of the norm. I think Greg was one of, mean, he was advocating for the women, and trying to figure out ways to create equal pay. But aside from him, there really, yeah, there were advocates. I don't want to, there were advocates, and advocating is very multi-pronged, and there's lots of soft touches that need to happen, right? Especially from the inside. If you're gonna like create change from the inside, like you still want to be a bro, like it's I would say there's probably some like nudges that Pete Mel did, or I don't know, that were like, hey, these women are performing really well, that in a WSL meeting, or I don't know, there's probably lots of things that like that I don't want to discount, and I actually in the film want to give credit to those men that helped along the way, because we need more of them.
Totally. I mean,
they're heroes.
Like, men who are listening, like, it makes a difference. You have to speak up for people. We have to speak up for people. There's no other way. If you're on the receiving end of that, it feels so isolating to feel like nobody notices. And I just think that scene plays so masterfully. Like, we experience that heartbreak with her in the face of a victory, right? And it's this very paradoxical situation. And the other scene I wanted to mention was the Jaws scene. So good, Sachi. Where all four women are out, and it's the first Jaws contest with women, the first women's divisions. Okay.
Oh, no, that one was the second.
Second. Okay. So
Might have been the third, actually. No, sorry, that was the third contest.
I remember
That
what
was
year
the third contest for women. It was the first contest where there was equal pay. So it's after they won equal pay.
Yeah, equal pay. And I think gosh, so much to talk about in that scene, but with regard to equal pay was what I was going to say. So in the scene, the women go out first, and it's a choppy day. They're talking about how ominous it was, and just really not the blue sky Hawaii offshore wind that we all imagine. It was dangerous, and they didn't have enough time to even watch the waves before their heat started, which is a life or death situation. You have to understand how the swell is behaving. What are the rogue sets? What's the timing of everything like? They're just off the boat, here you go. And one by one, every single woman gets severely injured. Bianca gets a concussion. Kiala has God knows how many wipeouts in that scene. Paige, it's something with her foot. Like, so everybody has like a horrible thing go wrong. Leashes break, boards break. And it's just a nightmare all the way around. And then soon thereafter, they end the women's heat, which goes for an hour or so. About
2 hours. I mean, they had both two
final
heats, the women, so it's 2 hours.
Right.
So I think it might have been 45 minutes heats. Oh, I should know that. But
and no one made a wave. Like, not.
No, there were some waves made. There were.
Okay.
Barely.
Yeah, and then the men go out afterwards. It's their heat, and there's two bad wipeouts, Twiggy and I can't remember who else. And then they call Billy Kemper. Yeah, and then
best in the world. Yeah,
the best in the world. Right. So it's like, I don't know, it just reminded me so much of like, a woman can say something's wrong and this is really bad, I'm hurt, blah blah blah. It's okay, you're just a weak little, I don't know that I don't mean to be so condescending with it, but it felt like this is what the scene was explaining to me, my interpretation. like, oh, it's okay, just go back on the boat, like put some ice on your head, lay down, you're gonna be fine. But then the men go out in the same conditions and are eating just as much shit and getting as severely injured. Holy crap, this is way too dangerous. We have to pull the plug.
Mhm.
As that was happening, like, are you registering that that's what's happening, or was it after the fact in the edit, getting the footage, processing it, that you were
Yeah,
able to put that into place? What was the processing
that's
of
a
it?
yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I processed that really until after the fact because it was also hearing from, yeah, I didn't process that in the moment. No, I don't think so. But as you were saying that analogy, I like that because I hadn't made that connection necessarily, but it does also just remind me of so many of the medical things or like Black women
Mhm.
in
Yep.
you know, specifically within the medical, community, just like all of the things that women or Black women are saying, this is not working, this is not working. And even, yeah, right, wasn't it Serena Williams even was told, she said that she had preeclampsia or had some issues with her pregnancy and was told, it's okay, don't worry about it. Um, so yeah,
Yeah,
thank
women's
you for
pain is
making that
not
analogy. I hope that
yeah.
people, make that connection.
It felt really clear to me, yeah, just this lack of seriousness that when it comes, we can just put them out there to test it out. Let's, oh, the shitty morning seasick conditions, like throw the women out there, they'll test it out, and then when it cleans up, we'll send the boy. Like, it just, what is equal about that? It absolutely didn't feel fair, and the irony is, okay, there's equal pay, but I think like what I'm interested in is what's next after that? Like, how do we continue pushing it? There are so many victories, and then of course there's still so much to do. And with your film, I'm wondering how and when did you decide on an ending for it? Have you already made up your mind what the ending of the film's going to be? Okay, and I know you
God,
don't want to do
yes,
it.
I have.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, and if you
I
could
think
break
that's always a challenge with documentaries for
the hardest
sure,
part.
knowing, especially when especially when there's no deadline or budget, you could, you know, in theory, just go on forever. But when I started this in 2014, I mean, it was 2016 was the year of the woman. Hillary Clinton was running for, we thought Hillary was going to be president. I was like, okay, sweet. I'm ahead of the game. Like I have all this footage from 2014. I was making this proposal for, this female empowerment film that's going to end in 2016. Hillary wins. They get a Mavericks contest. Woohoo, happy ending, and it's like 10 years later, there's still no Mavericks contest. So that Mavericks contest ending, I year after year had hopes that it might happen, but I no longer have hopes for that happening. But what did happen, which is arguably even better, is that the women were invited to the Eddie, and so that's where my film is more or less going to end. Is the Eddie, and then I think in the Coda, though, I also just recently went to the Totos contest where women competed for the first time. There's also been several years of incredible magnitude contests. So I think the Coda will end with and then of course all of the pipeline contests. So I feel like there's a lot of, celebratory moments that have happened in the last in recent women's surfing history that I'd like to include in the end.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like compressing all those events to speaks to just the inevitability of what's like women, we're equals. We're gonna be a part of
Mhm.
all these events. Like every time there's resistance, just it's gonna get plowed over eventually. It's inevitable that this is what the new reality is. So I think that's an extremely beautiful ending. I can't
I
wait
was
to
actually, as I'm saying that though, I'm like, well, wait, she's not revealing her ending. Why am I revealing my
oh,
ending?
I could tell you. I know.
But no, I mean, honestly,
It is.
honestly, I mean, people know, I think people know the ending. What they don't know is the beginning, you know? I think
Sure,
people have forgotten the beginning. I think they were just like,
totally.
especially the younger generation, know
100%.
nothing else.
Right, and a story is only a story if it has an arc. So it's not like you could tell the ending. I could tell you the beginning of my film, but it's meaningless without knowing where it ends up. And it's one or the other. You have to go through the journey. You got to experience it. So I don't think it gives anything away. I think that's just really beautiful. I was just wondering, like, um,
Yeah.
Because I didn't know if like equal pay is, are we done now? Like, I know we're not there yet, but is the film going to wrap it up there? It seems like the conversation goes a bit further, which I'm really happy to hear.
Well, I mean, I do also think that the ending is that there is no ending, like that
Right.
this is continue, we must continue to persist. There is still so much to be done, right? And the film is full of these heartbreaks of highs and lows. Oh, we're there, we're done. It's like in LFG, Megan Rapinoe says has this line where she's like, it's a game of whack-a-mole. Like you put,
Totally.
you do one and another pops up. And like I couldn't agree more. That's
Yeah.
what I've experienced in my own life. It's what I've experienced in front of the camera. And it's unfortunately probably what will continue to, all of change is glacial.
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly with the whack-a-mole thing. I say that all the time. So next I want to talk about your team and then also financing a little more deeply. So at what stage in the making of, since I know you're a one-woman band and I can relate, like we wear a lot of hats. That's always the case with independent filmmaking. When did you bring on producers? When did you bring on how'd you get your team? How'd you make those decisions? Who are they? And then segueing that into, again, the journey of financing, what were the stages of success or of getting financing? What were the failures of pitches and them not coming through? I have my own library of stories to share with this, so I would love to go deep there.
Yeah. Well, I had two false starts with teams. So I will say that in just that, yeah, that it's especially when you're not getting paid. I mean, I have not paid myself yet. So this has
So I'm
been
right there
10
with
years
you.
of
$0. 5 years, $0.
equity. So I mean, that's a whole problem in and of itself.
Yeah.
But we can come back to that. But yeah, so you got to enjoy you got to like who you're working with. You got to know that that person is like really in it to win it, is not in it for other ulterior motives or, which I was maybe it was definitely the case at the beginnings for some people and just some partnerships that just, we tried it out and it just wasn't I mean, wasn't working was that we weren't raising money is a large part of that, right? So it
Totally.
wasn't so what happened? I had a little fundraiser screening at a local, the Great Highway Gallery, which is just up the street from me, which is a small art gallery. And I screened some scenes there. And so my first executive producer and investor is this woman, Katie Zakarian. And she was at that screening and had met Luis Hoyos, the director of The Cove,
Okay.
Academy Award winning director of The Cove. She invited him. He came, he watched it, and he was like, let's work together. I want to help you with this. And so he came on as an executive producer, and then he introduced me to my current producer, Adrian Hall, who had worked with him on both The Cove and Racing Extinction.
Great.
And I think it's been 8 years now of working with Adrian. And Adrian is just a pro, has just a ton more experience than the other people I was partnered up with. And so um, she's just been, she's just wonderful. And she hasn't paid herself either. So, so she's only in it for equity, which is rare that it happens in documentary film. So she's really in it because she believes in it ultimately, and so the money, and never like there was never this windfall of like a ton coming in, but there would be I had a grant for 75 grand that was through people I knew who had seen, been following what I was doing. And so that was that came at just the right time. So that kept me going for a little bit more. And then a woman who did a story about me for NPR. I don't know. I don't know if I should be, I'm going to keep names out of it for now. Just, but she invested $100,000.
Great.
So
Amazing.
that was a big,
Yeah.
huge. I was like, cause, I mean, I'm just glad I was nice to her when they were like, I had no idea that that was a possibility, from you know, when she had her journalist hat on. So so that was amazing and really also came at just the right time. I think it was with that money, with that 100,000, that I was finally able to hire my editor, Stephanie
Great,
Machura.
great.
And you know, once you start paying someone, things start rolling, really rolling. So then when did the next big chunk was another 100 that came from a woman who we did this fundraising screening in Nasara, Costa Rica. And it was actually the mother of my first investor who watched this, and she was a cab driver in another life.
Wow.
And yeah, and back then they weren't allowed to, the female cab driver was not allowed to drive at night. And they organized and protested it and won.
Wow.
And she watched those scenes you saw and was just swearing at the screen, and it was just like, I can't believe this shit is still happening. And so she yeah, put her money where her mouth was, thank God, and has been a wonderful supporter. And then when's my last? And then oh, recently, so we also had a fundraiser at in Palo Alto. And we got like a little here, a little there. Very grateful for all of that. I should backtrack. We had a fundraiser in Bolinas, got some significant funding from that.
Great. So these in-person events seem to be pretty effective.
Yeah. So, and
Great.
then this other one, yeah, this last in-person event in Palo Alto led us to another event there. And we got funding out of there, but another event there led us to our latest investor, which was another 100. And you hear these numbers, and even as I say them, it's just like $100,000. Oh my God, like, why can't you make your film? And even people who have donated, they're just like, I don't understand. Like, why can't you just make this film for $100,000? Like, what's the big deal? And you're just like, if you're not a filmmaker, you yeah, you're just
You're the
like,
line item.
people have to get paid, you know, like editors cost a lot of money. All of this finishing stuff costs a lot of money. I should say also though, that you're not going to have any trouble getting that finishing. At least in my experience with Crutch, we got like 90% of our funding in the last like 6 months of making it, you know,
It's
like once people see it,
yeah,
they
people
are much more inclined to support it.
they don't believe in unicorns or like Bigfoot, but they'll believe in like a tactile film once
Yeah.
it's really interesting. But I think, but it's so hard to get it there. And I feel like what I just want to hit home is independent filmmaking. It's the analogy I always use. It's like you never fill your gas tank all the way up. It's just enough to get
Yes.
to the next thing. It's just
Yes,
get to the next
exactly.
thing. And that's a very, imagine doing a road trip where every single time you're just filling up to get to the next town, to get to the next town. What an exhausting way to do a road trip, but that's the way it is. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. I feel like once you do have, you know, a few films under your belt, event that I hope is like people write you big fat checks and trust that you know what you're doing at that point. But it's hard. And the film can only move as fast as you're getting the resources in to funnel it. And I'm curious, did you pitch to surf companies, surf brands? What was that
Oh
experience
God.
like?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, that was like in the early days, like especially guys were like, well, did you ask what about their sponsor? What about these women sponsors? Can't they fund it? And I'm like, they don't have sponsors. Let's start with that. They don't have sponsors. But even when they did get sponsors, I just, surf companies are not, I don't know any surf company that's given significantly to any major film. I mean, I know Patagonia just did that film about Jerry Lopez. That was probably a big lift, but and Rip Curl supported Bethany's film, but I don't think they supported it 100%. I think there was probably some partnerships in there that brought on the full funding. So I mean, you know, surf companies are notoriously just not deep pocketed with their funding of independent projects like this, and it's understandable. Also, it's, you know, this is like a controversial or like potentially
Yeah.
you know,
Makes people
what's that?
I said there's an accountability factor of how whatever brands or companies are contributing to the issues that you're bringing up in your
Yeah,
film.
well, they don't want to be issue based is
Right,
the
exactly.
issue. They don't want to be issue based. It's too risky for them to be issue based. So
Right.
so I think that's part of it. but even other brands, like, you know, nothing, there's no such thing as free lunch, right? So even if other brands came on, you'd have to be doing, you know, other stuff to, you know, fulfill those obligations with the brand. And then there's the factor that I think this is all changing, but at least when we started, you know, Netflix would not look at something that was brand funded, you
Right.
know, for ethical reasons. I know that's changed quite a bit. So, but anyhow, yeah, brands, I've given up on brands, even though everyone,
Yeah.
it seems like the logical thing, but well, if any brands are listening to this, I haven't given up on you, but I'm
I've
not
given
counting on it.
up.
Yeah, I'm not. Have you
Yeah.
gotten brands behind?
No, we came close with a couple. I have one story to share of probably one of the worst things I've ever had said to me in a pitch call from a very big brand, um, which was basically a comment. My film, for people who don't know, is about a paraplegic ocean rower who rode solo from Los Angeles to Hawaii, paralyzed from the waist down, 60-year-old woman. Um, and it was basically a comment of uh, very crudely put in the call. Love the story, absolutely amazing. Wow, this film just looks so good. It's so evocative and immersive. We don't have a space for disabled athletes under the umbrella of our company. Outright said we don't see how this person fits in to our profile,
Wow.
what we look for. And I just was like, I couldn't believe that those words were said out loud. It's one thing to like say it in private and know that there are these systemic reasons that we don't have diversity, anywhere, not anywhere, but obviously it's changing. But it was unbelievable. Like this moment, I can explain it to you in more depth after, but I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. And I just wrote that brand off forever, honestly. Like I am so deeply offended by that to this day.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just felt like there was such a lack of to your point, like it is a business decision ultimately. They are trying to maintain themselves as a massive corporation, but just like a lack of humanity and I don't know, awareness, tact, like all of these things that I really value as a human being, how we're interacting with each other. And I was gonna say too, it sounds like your team is mostly women right now.
It's all women.
That's great. It's all women crew and all women cast. Like,
Well, not crew. We've had some men, and my assistant editor currently is a man, and I want, you know, I that's also I feel okay with that because I think that diversity is important. But I'm
yeah,
trying to be mostly women. Yeah.
sure. I think that's amazing. I just feel like, yeah, we have to go out of our way to make opportunity for people who don't get it. Otherwise, it's the pendulum has to swing to a more extreme until it does
Yeah.
equalize, which I know you get. But yeah, I mean, that journey of your funding, and I've kind of dealt the same. I was curious about brands because yours is so much more. Angela's in this niche of ocean rowing, which is such a weird sport to begin with, and there's not a lot of brand support there. But surfing is just littered with sponsor stickers and everything all the way around. And I've always just been
You would
curious
think.
who's
Yeah, you would think.
the
And
check.
everybody, that's been my Achilles heel from the start with also grants, with funders granting organizations. They've passed me up because they say that this actually seems like a film that could make money. Everybody's like, this actually seems like a film that could make money. This seems like it's, you know, they just think it's like a no-brainer for getting brand sponsorship and all these things. So they're like, you're fine, you'll be fine.
Sure.
But I'm not.
But
So
it'll
how have you funded your film?
We did, oh God. I mean, it is made for total like just bootstrapped all the way through. This production company I'm working with in Ventura, Vacation Land, they've fronted a good chunk of money to it was kind of offline for a couple of years, where I moved to Nazare and left filmmaking and had a whole Dark Night of the Soul experience. But then, so it took a lot to kind of get it back on track. We had to basically recreate an entirely new team, all new legal, all these things to reofficiate it as a film. So Vacation Land covered a lot of those costs. They also paid for our trip to the Marshall Islands, where we went to go find Angela's boat, and can't say more because you gotta watch the film. But So that was great, just having a production company that kind of had that safety net. And then it was ruthless pitching for 6 to 8 months. All of these, I mean, like we almost got married, so to speak, to a couple companies that were going to fund. Post was done, was taken care of, and then it's like the 11th hour, these sort of fell apart. That happened twice with two major options, and it kind of taught me really nothing's true until like money is transferred into your account. You just keep pretending, act as though nothing has happened, and I don't, very little shocks me now. And then it got to the point where I had a private call with this current investor around September, and I had been on so many meetings and calls, and I was just so tired of getting like the 6 week, oh, we're so interested. Oh, can you send us this? Oh, blah, 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 like on and off and on and off. It just takes forever. And I was on set working and had a quick 15-minute break to call this guy. And I was like, I'm going to send you the rough cut. You're going to know immediately watching the rough cut if you want to invest in this or not. Just call me. Just call me right after and let me know if it's a yes or a no. Like, please do not take 4 weeks to come up with an answer. Just let me know. And he called me right after and it was a yes. And I learned something from that experience, which was that confidence of like, whether you decide to come on or not, I'm going to figure out how to get this made, was he perceived that. And that was yeah, it felt like one of the strongest meetings I ever had. And I was just in a hurry and I didn't have time to waste anymore. I was too tired to go
Yeah.
through the seduction process of
Yeah.
so it's just like, you'll know. Is this a story you care about? Let me know.
Yeah.
So from that, I've been a lot more just succinct, I feel like, in meetings, like getting to the point. And I've also learned that no's tend to be very slow burns, but yeses are pretty much immediate. And you can almost tell right away if it's going to be one or the other. So I usually pick one to invest more energy in. But yeah, he came in and financed that last, milestone we needed to wrap post essentially to get us to picture lock, which is where we are now. And then hopefully that last bit for color and sound and all the little, coats of polish, like we can just figure out at some point. Someone will
Yeah.
come in.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy.
It's a journey. It's great. But yeah,
Yeah.
also unpaid the whole time. And I think that's something, I don't know, like we have to juggle so many other, I teach an after school program to kids. I'm doing so many different types of jobs at one time to maintain life. And then, but it really feels like my full-time job is this film. And I don't know if that feels the same way for you, but it's just something that I feel like is so easily ignored. I heard a story once. I don't mean to tell this to upset you, but a friend of mine was a producer at a big surf company, and they paid a rather well-known surf filmmaker, I think it was like 100K for this short film that they needed him to turn around that winter season, and he just didn't deliver. Like they send the
Took
money,
the money and ran.
just did not turn in the project. And when she was telling me the story, I mean, I still think about this almost weekly. Like she told me a really interesting thing too after that. I was like, how are there no consequences? Like, is he going to get hired again? Like, what the hell? How does that happen? Because I just don't understand that. Like, that's
Yeah.
unprofessional. It's not even unprofessional, is not even the right word. It's like criminal. Like,
Yeah.
you just
Yeah.
did not apply finish a deal. And she told me a really interesting pattern of her emails with men versus women that they were hiring for whatever shoots or photos or whatever. When that company would offer a rate, let's say $20,000, this is what we need, women would be so appreciative and not counter it or not say, oh my God, like yes, thank you, I'll get this to you right on time, deliverables right on time, everything. Men, on the other hand, be like, 20 grand, like that's my rate alone. Like this needs to be at least twice that. There was always a negotiation afterwards, always. And she said that it was just black and white, like what women think we deserve because our expectations are so low of not getting things. And that was another lesson that I would love to share out loud with the world. Like, don't be afraid to negotiate. There's always, because when people are offering you something, there's always a little wiggle room there. They know that they're expecting that conversation afterwards.
Especially with your salary, because I did not fucking negotiate with my salary for my teaching job currently, and that has followed me for 12 years. Like it has not, if I had just negotiated from the get-go,
Right. It's
a
good luck.
higher, my whole life, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars more that I would have in my bank account,
Right.
so like, but I also know that the most recent hire, 10 years after, whatever, 8 years after me, 9 years after me, was offered, this is so upsetting, but yeah, was offered, is making $25,000 more, started at that much more, like, yes,
Yep.
it's 8 years later, but just like
Yeah.
quantitatively, it's still like, we're talking $100,000 more every 4 years that is in the bank, and it's just like, it's just so it's, yeah. And then you might know the statistic of um women applying for jobs, that they will only, research shows that men will apply for a job if they have 60% of the qualifications. I believe it's 60, it might be less, but 60, I think. And women will only apply for a job if they have what percentage?
What is it? Higher? 100%.
100%.
Ouch.
100%, so yeah, it's just, there's just so much systemically that has to
Yeah, that's
change.
like all of this is just deeply ingrained. It's so much unlearning that has to happen, not learning, but unlearning.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
yeah, it takes serious guts to, walk into a meeting where you don't want to not get the job. So you don't want to undermine the pay and risk losing it altogether. But there is so much respect that comes from the top of it. I don't say this at all as someone who has like mastered this. It's constantly a learning experience, but um yeah, it's just finding your power. And I think that's really good advice. Negotiate from the top. It is so much harder later on. Add a contingency. Stuff costs more money than you think it's going to cost. Have a
Yeah.
safety net in there
Yeah.
because it's so much more awkward to go back to the client and say, sorry,
Right.
we need an extra 10K. Just build it in there. Bake it in.
Yeah.
Everything just, yeah, it's an art. But okay, I wanted to do just a couple more questions. I mean, I could talk forever,
I
but
will know, just quickly on the funding thing, though, I think that might be useful for filmmakers, is that another thing is like, have you gone to Netflix? Have you gone to all these streamers, which we have, not all, but some. And the problem with the way that we've made this film now, and people should know that, well, first, people should know that Netflix only works with known quantities. They only work with marquee directors that they already know and that they've already worked with, for the most part. But I mean, currently that is what it is. But they also, most streamers and most production companies, they want to have a hand in it, right? And so we have basically, we've made too much of the film for streamers or production
mm,
companies to get
mm,
involved, because they could give us the money, but they wouldn't have they wouldn't have as much control over the narrative as they would like, or like, I had one brand, I won't name, say that, God, they drag this on for so long, this one brand, and then the final offer was 50 grand, and it was just for a trailer, and they wanted to have the power to remove me as the director.
what?
And
No.
like,
Oh God, that pisses me off so.
it's like, I don't think
The
so.
audacity. What the
Yeah.
hell? Ugh. So interesting. So your experience, so you guys have screened the current rough cut to streamers already, and you've done like
Not all of them. And
all of
so what they want then is a finished product, because it doesn't make sense financially. And I get
yes,
it. It doesn't
yes.
make
They have to buy
financial
it as a
sense.
finished product. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
They, at a certain, once you reach a certain, like,
Yep.
part of that arc of production, it's kind of like, they're just like, we'll see it when it's done,
Totally,
because
totally. Yes,
yeah,
that's okay, good. I was a little confused there. Yeah, that's what I've
yeah,
understood as well, and that's our plan with the film is it's done, not
yeah.
changed. Sometimes they want to reopen it, surgery on a couple scene, whatever. That's fine.
Right,
Like,
right.
buy it. Give me an offer.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, good. I'm so optimistic for you guys. I think it's gonna
And
I
you, right?
yeah,
Have
thank
you
you.
pitched to streamers?
That's next step. We picture lock and then that's
Okay.
next.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a couple are like no, we haven't pitched anyone actually yet. I was about to say a couple are aware, but no, it's been pretty quiet. We were hoping for a festival premiere,
Yeah.
which might still happen, but I think now we're just like, let's just focus on pre-sale. It's
Uh,
festivals are a whole other
yeah.
world. But okay, a couple more things. Which I just bring it back to your film, and its contents. I just wanted to mention a couple moments that I like brought tears to my eyes and just connect because I'm selfish and I want to talk about how it mattered to me. But the
Yeah.
first one was when Kiala wins Barrel of the Year at the WSL Awards, and she says, It's so beautiful. She says, I have never been so proud to be a woman. And she's
Mhm,
talking about, she contextualizes it as growing up in Kauai,
mhm,
surfing against boys. They didn't even have, I think she was the only girl, so they didn't have a women's division. And she also has an interesting line in there. Let me read it correctly. She said, boys losing to girls is shameful to them. They weren't born that way. They were taught that.
mhm,
Incredible line. So like,
mhm,
wow, its own 1 hour long discussion alone in that.
mhm,
And she stands up on stage and she says how for most of her life she has wanted to suppress or ignore the qualities of being a woman because it has been a disadvantage to her in this sport. And here she finally wins this incredible award that means so much to her. She says, I've never been so proud to be a woman. And it hit me like a ton of bricks, was so beautiful and so heartfelt. And um that the way you capture that scene, like how we visit, everyone's reactions as a friend group, I just think this film is so important of cementing why female relationships, friendships, like core ride or die people is just so valuable. Even when Kiala is injured on the boat after the Jaws thing and Andrea goes and kisses her on the forehead and says, oh my God, you won. I'm so happy you won. Like what a beautiful world to live in where everyone is so much on each other's side. And I wanted to
mhm,
just compare it to something I experienced when I was living in Nazare, which is to
mhm,
say the polar opposite, where when I was living there, two women live there full time that are extremely amazing women, athletes, big wave surfers, beyond talented. And I was completely shocked when I got there. And this is also in 2020, so I have no idea what's happened since with everyone's relationships, that they weren't friends. In fact, they were kind of enemies, and it was pretty intense. And you were like on one camp or the other. And I, as a young woman, paddling out with my water housing, so excited to shoot people, like this is a new world. I was crestfallen when I witnessed this, that the two women on planet Earth who choose to live on this same chunk of rock in the Portuguese coastline, who are the only two women on the planet who surf this wave, have more in common than the other 8 billion people on this earth, are now
mhm,
against each other, are pitted against each other. And there's this
mhm.
competition that is eating them both alive and creating this like schism. And your film shows the complete opposite and what comes of that, what flourishes as a result. And so this isn't really a question, it's just a conversational thing of I absolutely loved that. And I think that is totally the message like we need to hear and understand right now.
Yeah, well, thank you. But I also think the other story is unfortunately very common, and it's also a tack that people have used forever to squash, female progression is to pit women against each other and or to
Totally.
pit minorities against each other because
Right.
let's just
And
look
who does
at
that? Who does the pitting against each other? It's not them. They didn't pick
yeah,
that. They're pawns
exactly.
on a game there. And yeah, it just feels I hope they have or will like transcend whatever that is because they would be so much more powerful as a unit and so much more productivity could happen for
Yeah.
female sport in
I mean, I
general.
also think part of it is, I'm hopeful that it's somewhat generational, because in my generation, we were often like the onlys. That's also part of why we just this meeting of us for this first meeting of us for me was so electric because it was like all these people operating in their own, as the onlys in their different parts of
Yes.
the world. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, we're like we had a sisterhood there, a natural sisterhood, at least that's how the women in my film felt it. And I think that because there's, you mentioned the brand that didn't have room for a disabled person. Like, I think most brands only had room for one woman. And so like, it just also was, I think it kind of cultivated this feeling of, and these are competitive people by
Sure.
nature, they're athletes, right? And so
Sure.
like, I think it just kind of cultivates this, like, okay, I'm going to stake my spot in this one as the only for this brand or this sport. And it's like anyone else who comes up, you're just like, daggers and
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
want to shoot it down.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think that's part of the like competitive and commercial culture and like gender
Totally.
culture that has existed but is hopefully changing.
Yeah, and I mean it goes back to like an abundance mindset versus a scarcity mindset. There is
Yeah.
exactly you said there's not enough in these brands, there's room for one person, there's not enough room at the table, there's not enough prize money in the you know, in the pockets. So who's gonna get it? And yeah, the ideal would be that eventually, hopefully soon, there's just an abundance of options for everyone. So it's less of a survival mechanism that kicks in. And
Mhm.
I think as a filmmaker, we can relate to it to a certain extent. I want everyone to do well. I love everyone's stories. It's impossible for a filmmaker. It takes so long to make one movie. Like we need all of these conversations to come out at the same time. But it does feel daunting that there's only so much resource at one time, or it feels that way. I don't know that it is that way. It just can get perceived that way.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of just resisting it and not falling prey to like that mindset. Okay, one more thing. We could talk more, but I wanted you to,
Yeah, I know. I hope we continue this
I
conversation
know it's
offline,
to
and
share with you.
yeah.
I just wanted you to mention who right now in surf, outside of surf, um, are really impressive allies for progressing women's surfing. Can be female, can be male, anybody that just stands out to you right now as someone we should pay attention to. Who's showing up, who's defending. I was also thinking of the Greg Knoll moment, like just the
Yeah.
complacency in these moments, like who is
Mhm.
not being complacent, who is being outwardly vocal of.
Well, I don't think I will call out, I mean, yeah, my film will call out some people, but I think, well, but even the some people in my film, I mean, have come around. I mean, I feel like Jeff Clark, we can call an ally now.
Great. That's so good to
And yeah, I think that times are changing, and I know, like, just most recent, I mean, Greg Long continues to be an incredible ally.
hear. Awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. Pete Mal is awesome. There's so many. I mean, Ryan Seelbach is he's lesser known, but he's an underground legend here and has mentored Bianca from the beginning. Grant Washburn was the guy who organized this first contest. I should say that they also were blacklisted from that year, Ryan and Grant. Um, I don't know if I want to, well, it's the truth. So I don't know if blacklisted, but they were not invited, and
Sure, sure.
they should
That's
have
really
been.
interesting. Yeah.
So I guess allyship does have its still maybe has its downfalls, I guess, or there is a price to being an ally. But you know, I don't know, in surfing, like
Sure.
WSL just recently had this video they put out for International Women's Day, and they interviewed a lot of luminaries, you know, including Shane Dorian, guys that are now coaching some of these women, and
Cross
they all
partnership.
had they all had not only wonderful things to say, but like I think they got it. Like, you know, they
Yeah.
were like, yeah, it's because there's this opportunity now that women are have the opportunity to perform and have the opportunity to progress. And it's because this younger generation coming up is having this experience now that like it's just going to be a whole different ball game in a few years, you know. Um, that said, there's still half the amount of women competing in the WSL. Um, there's so much work to be done. So, but we can't do it without allies. We can't, period. Like, and that's actually my main goal with the film, is to make it something that, you know, the quarterback of the Alabama football team like
That's
wants to bring his girlfriend to. You know,
awesome.
I just I don't think that change is going to happen in a vacuum. Change is only going to happen if men are on board and are
100%.
defending us and are advocating for us and recognize the world is just going to be a better place when more women have the opportunity to thrive in
Yes.
whatever it is, not
Yes.
just surfing, right?
100%. And I was actually speaking with Keith Malloy about this a while ago. We were remarking how many of the world's best male surfers have all had daughters.
Oh, they all have. It's
They all
crazy.
have
Like,
girls.
it's so crazy.
So interesting. And it's
So
like,
I'll say Jamie
what
Mitchell is an ally, you know, Lucas
Mitchell,
Tumbo is an
Marquise,
ally.
um,
Kai Lenny has been an ally.
yeah,
You know,
it's
all of
great.
these guys, but they all just also happen to have daughters. And
Amazing.
the
Yeah,
irony
fresh
is,
hair. Yeah, it's irony, but it's also like this weird karmic loop, I feel like, where
yeah,
not to say that these men individually are like responsible for anything, but it's like this now they'll know what it feels like to be that dad in the theater watching that scene with Bianca. They will understand that. And that, if that doesn't compel them to defend or stand up for something that matters, I don't know what will. And
Exactly.
it's this like lesson in their bones that's going to get cemented, and it's going to see like brand a generation. And I'm so freaking excited for like what's to come. I just feel like the sport is moving so fast and I can't keep up, but I'm happy to watch.
Yeah, I don't know. My daughter, though, is growing up in this next generation, obviously, and they're still just from the very get, like from kickball, like the girls are the last ones to be picked, and like, somebody asked the guys, like, why didn't you pick her? And it's like, oh, I didn't even see her. It's like just like that kind of crystallizes the whole problem, is just this lack of seeing, lack of awareness. But with that, I will say that my daughter just beat all of the boys in her school in arm wrestling. And
Awesome.
so I think there's still like, yeah, this empowerment that comes with like breaking down. I mean, it seems like it's just like winning it for the women, but I think it's also about just like breaking. And I mean, I think big wave surfing is unique and filmmaking for that matter in these male dominated fields, that I think what it's like to both be rejected by men or the establishment, but also the feeling of being respected by your peers who might be male. And
Mhm.
yeah, I guess I don't know what I'm saying. I guess I'm just saying that
I'm
for
tracking you.
better or for worse, there is still this delineation. Oh, I think I was relating it to KK saying that the
Mhm.
guys are conditioned that it's not
Yes.
okay to lose to a woman.
Yes. It can't
And
be
like,
shamed with it. Yes.
yeah, but these boys, it's been a big talk around the school because these boys like can't really get over the fact that they lost to a girl. But I guess hopefully that's changing. I don't know. Yeah, the more
Yeah,
that women are doing that, then maybe it'll just be normalized.
exactly. When that's not like a headline event, when
Yes,
it's just like,
exactly.
okay, this happened today. This is just another day where, and then maybe tomorrow I'm gonna lose to the boy. Like it's like that's equality where it's just
Yeah,
not this matter of dominating. That's
yeah,
like, and I think I feel like it's just a matter of talking about it and being really open about what's going on, what feelings are. It's just demystifying it. It grows into such a like, I don't know, disease otherwise and it's okay. Like it's not that big of a deal. And of course, of all the things, sports, the thing that's supposed to keep you healthy and be fun, it should not be associated with, I know I'm not supposed to say should, but it's a problem when it gets associated with these darker feelings of shame and disappointment or being let down. And it's about so much more. What did you learn?
yeah.
Did you learn by not winning this time? What do we do better next time? Like a growth mindset always associated with it.
Yeah, I mean, I had two statistics I throw out a lot is from the Women's Sports Foundation, which is headed by Billie Jean King,
Mhm.
and from their research of women that are in C-suite positions, so women in power in corporations, 94% of them played sport as a
Oh,
competitive
that's
sports
really interesting.
growing up. But girls drop out of sports at a rate twice that of boys by the age of 14. So we're losing this whole talent pool that is feeling like they, are not feeling welcome in this activity that is such a developmental
Mm.
boost to their entire life, of learning how to win and lose, of how to be confident, all of these things, of being, strong in their body and strong in their mind. And all of those things play out in our society, not only to leading a corporation, but just so much. There's so much talent that
Mhm.
has been lost because of that. And not to mention the whole like talent that's lost to like sexual harassment stuff, the Me Too stuff. I was just recently I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but I was recently at um, a talk where with Rowena Chu. She was one of the women that testified against Harvey Weinstein. And every single woman I met had left there industry, whether it was gaming or tech, or but they had been sexually harassed and left their industry because of that. And so
Trauma.
it's just like so much talent that is in the film industry too. There's just so much talent that has been lost. It's just heartbreaking. It's
And
heartbreaking.
where would we be as a world
Exactly.
if
Yeah.
if like what problems would have been solved? Where yeah, it just for whatever reason, I don't know.
But we're changing that.
We're changing it. It's happening.
Yeah.
Like yeah, I just
Team
feel like
Maven is changing that.
Teenagers
All the
changing it.
people
Everyone's
watching
doing
this are
that. You gotta
changing
get
that.
angry. You know, in dodgeball where he throws a wrench and said, "You gotta get angry." That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm optimistic for sure, and I feel like your film. I just absolutely cannot wait until it's done and it's out, and I think it's gonna work in conversation with so many. Like there's Naiad, there's The Deepest Breath, there's Mountain Queen, which I don't know if you there.
Yeah.
Yes,
Mhm.
that's similar. There's my
Mhm.
film, like all of these are going to come out at the same time or have come out, and that's the zeitgeist, you know. It's like
Yeah. Yeah.
they're
I hope
badass
so.
women doing things you haven't heard of or you haven't heard of them, and
Yep.
it's and it has happened, and these and it's I love when they're not, you know, like teenagers, when they're middle-aged or older, and it's like, no, I've been doing this my whole life, and this is the trajectory that it's taken, and
Mhm.
I'm personally very compelled by those
Yeah.
stories.
I mean, I think that the being compelled to tell those stories and being compelled to create change, which I think we both are. I know it's for myself and probably you, that's helped us get through those highs and lows. I mean, when you were talking about the highs and lows and getting rejections, like I have been in tears so many times. I have tried to walk away from this so many times that I'm just like, no, it's never gonna get done. And then you just have to pick yourself up and just keep going. But yeah, I just
Yeah,
hope
we didn't even talk
people
about burnout. Damn, that's a whole other
but
like
I just hope people watching this, well, not only watching our films, I think the films, the reason that we keep going is we know that the film will reach people and
this.
remind them of this, that you have to keep going, and to still have, you know, seemingly impossible dreams.
Yeah,
But yeah, I hope people watching this also will be inspired to do that. And
I
I'm
agree.
inspired by you.
Oh, I'm
So
inspired
thank
by
you
you
for the
so I've been
conversation.
inspired by you for so long. You're absolutely amazing. And I think just to your point, like with the film thing, for me, what it feels like, and maybe for you, is it's like something can't get put to rest until it's done. And it's like this deep knowing of, for whatever reason, this is the story that I am on this earth to tell at this time. And I have to honor whatever this mission is, even though it's completely unclear, even though it's unpaid, it's traumatic often, or I'm completely burnt out. Like there's all of these negatives that are inevitable with it. But and so many people have asked, why don't you just don't do it? Just don't do it. And they don't get it. It's something
Yeah,
be like
it's not
it'd
an
be like
option.
not taking your baby, like not giving birth to your baby at the end of
Yeah,
you get to month 9, you're like, well, just don't give, just keep
yeah,
it in your stomach. It's fine.
yeah,
Like you don't get it. It has to come out. Like
yeah,
so
yeah,
much has gone into it. And I'm really excited. It sounds like our films will be ready at similar times. So that means we're going to be doing film tours
yeah,
together and all the things.
yeah.
We
I
can just
hope
have so
so.
many more conversations about it. So
Actually, that's motivation for me to get this done so we can be at
yes,
some
anything
of
I
these.
can do to help. I don't know what, but I'll volunteer anything. So we can call that a wrap. And then
Okay, and also I should say, since we're calling that a rep, just you don't you're still recording, that's fine. But
yeah, it's
I
fine.
do I do apologize. I still have a little bit of guilt for not being, it was another it was like a Garrett McNamara moment that
Um,
I wasn't in your film. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be in
oh,
your
don't
film so
worry.
long
Oh
ago,
my
because
gosh,
I'm
Sachi,
sure it
this.
would have been amazing. I
Oh,
just remember at the time I was just overwhelmed with stuff, and my
no,
husband
it all
also was
worked out.
like, "Why are you doing all this stuff for no pay? And what are you doing?"
I know. And don't
Um,
worry, I don't even, that's like, it's so funny. I wanted to do a doc on, at first I wanted to do it on Diana Nyad. So this is back
mhm.
in like 2016. And I got on the
But
phone with,
if there's one thing you are, it's ambitious.
well, yeah, but I mean, she wasn't, you know, they weren't talking about her like they are right now. It's pretty funny to me that, oh, they did make a film about her.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Jimmy and Shai made a film about her. Okay.
Yeah,
But I thought she was kind of crazy. I got on the phone with her. And it just was like, oh, this is too big of a topic. And then, okay, who's the person that I is like more reachable, but is I'm so inspired by and can really model my career after? And you were the I mean, there's not many. Like But it wound up working out in a completely different way because those films at USC, we were so restricted by what we could do. I wound up making a 2.5 minute like poetic film because the restrictions, you have to perform a miracle in 6 weeks and you only get 5 minutes to tell a story, and your story is just beyond that. I don't know what I would have done to do justice to it, so I actually really think it all worked out, and I've seen so many beautiful things come out sharing your story is crazy. Like you need a 10-part documentary series. I don't even know where to start. You've got so many amazing, crazy things that have happened in your life. It's quite a tapestry that you have.
Thank you.